Hi, Philip Nathan here again. I hope you're finding these videos interesting and useful. Through the other videos up to now, we've looked at the core principles set out in Living Humanism, which, as you'll recall, are centered on supporting our own well-being and the well-being of all others, and reducing and preventing pain and suffering for ourselves and for all others. These are the fundamental and core principles underlying what's put forward both in the guide Living Humanism, the written guide, and in these videos. And then after that, we've spent some time looking at the actions we can take in various spheres of our lives in relation to supporting the well-being of others, something which overlaps significantly with the actions we take to support our own well-being and which represent for the vast majority of us a necessary part of our own well-being. This video is going to look at what I've referred to as additional fundamental principles. The first additional fundamental principle here being the need for us to use rationality, reason, and evidence to support us in achieving our core principles, our range of goals, and a second additional fundamental principle, the need for us to use our passions, emotions, and instincts to help us achieve our well-being goals. So for Living Humanism, our use of rationality, reason, logic, the evidence we gain from the range of sources, be that evidence from our own personal experience, evidence from the experience of others, our encountering the ideas of others, whether it's evidence from empirical data-based research, all of these are seen as crucial in supporting us to achieve our goals of supporting well-being and preventing and reducing pain and suffering for ourselves and all others. They are crucial in informing our personal conduct. Grounded in the core principles, which are themselves based in reason and rationality, our use of an effective application of rationality, reason, evidence, and also logic provides us with the best opportunity for living the fulfilled, secure, successful lives of well-being and happiness that we would all as individuals wish to experience. Putting rational thought, reason, our use of evidence, applying logic in our everyday lives provides us with the best route to supporting the many component goals of our well-being, such as building and maintaining the kinds of families, communities, societies, and the broader human society that couldn't support us as individuals. And they provide us with our best route and opportunity for supporting the kind of families, communities, societies, and broader human society in which we wish to live. Reason and rationality are defined in Living Humanism as processes involving our use of acceptable evidence, logic, and indeed argument in ways which not only lead us to establish core principles, but which determine our goals within the framework of these core principles. They determine our actions in implementing the core principles and the other principles and lead to optimal outcomes in terms of promoting well-being and reducing pain and suffering for ourselves and others. So actions through which we might cause significant hurt to ourselves or in which we do significant damage to others are in the main, and not always, seen as being irrational. For Living Humanism, acceptable evidence refers to the range of categories of experience, including the experience of including our own personal experience and observation, evidence derived from sources such as experiments or other systematic experience-based empirical investigations, like scientific research, sociological research, and so forth, and other evidence derived from attending to, encountering and interpreting and evaluating the experience, knowledge, and understanding of others, all of which build on our own knowledge, understanding, and expertise. This evidence leads to our interpretations of, our evaluation of, and thinking about reality, which itself can comprise evidence. I mean, the thinking there. It includes encounters with acknowledgement of the thinking interpretations of others and the interpretation of the logical deduction, our interpretation of the logical deductions and logical thinking of others, based in their experiences and the evidence they produce or encounter. All of these forms of evidence can and indeed need to and optimally should be used to produce rational and reasonable decisions, conclusions, and actions that can support our effective personal conduct, our personal well-being, and the well-being of others. Of course, such depth of thinking and use of evidence, rationality, and the like is reasonable in theory in some circumstances, but practical thinking day to day frequently requires of us quick thinking and decisions and doesn't allow us the luxury of time for extensive evidence gathering and the like. But more of that in a few seconds. Getting back to the idea of evidence, identifying the importance of evidence in our thinking, actions, and decision-making requires us to define what is unacceptable evidence in relation to such thinking, actions, and conduct. Within the framework of living humanism, this unacceptable evidence includes reports from individuals about claimed supernatural experiences, visions of angels, ghosts, instruction from gods in visions or reported visions, or supernatural events found in ancient books, claimed to be the words of such omnipotent gods. While of course providing evidence in some senses of something, sometimes history, culture, the state of mind of the person describing their supernatural experiences, perhaps social phenomena too, or even the perhaps inclinations of some human minds, such claims fall short of acceptable evidence standards, and such supernaturalism provides no basis for deciding on our personal everyday conduct and actions, or thinking about such conduct and action. Often, as mentioned a few seconds ago, we suffer from a lack of evidence or have apparently contradictory evidence. In particular, with regard to decisions on our daily lives, many of the decisions we make day to day cannot be made on the basis of systematic, empirical, or scientific study. And so we have to make decisions about our personal conduct and actions based on that inadequate or insufficient or even contradictory evidence. Moreover, the interpretation of the evidence we receive day to day can be complex, even if we have significant evidence. Nevertheless, we do need to gather the evidence we can, where that's possible, and act with reason and rationality, logic, to the best of our ability on the basis of the evidence we have. And this comprises the optimum way to support our own well-being and the well-being of others. Sometimes we'll need to make spontaneous decisions, which will be fundamentally based in our experience, knowledge, familiarity, and expertise, built on the evidence of experience we've had, and sometimes tied to feelings, maybe often tied to feelings and emotion too. That's the practicality of everyday life. But we can build our knowledge, understanding, and gain experiences, act as evidence to support us in our rational moment-to-moment decision-making. Having emphasized rationality, reason, evidence, mentioned logic, it's clear that our emotions, feelings, our passions, our instincts can play, and indeed frequently almost always play, a significant role in influencing and determining our personal actions and conduct. As opposed to what might be seen as a cold, uncaring rationality, a rationality divorced from our emotional selves, divorced from love, care, our passion and passions. For this living humanism guide, for us to live humanism and support well-being, our enacting, our putting into practice of rationality and reason requires that we understand and make use of these deep-rooted, embedded elements of our human selves, of our humanity, of who we are. Living humanism does not support a vision of some kind of white lab-coated scientific implementation of rationality, logic, and evidence that's ignorant of human love, feelings, emotions, and passion. Our passions, emotions, instincts, our feelings need to be acknowledged as present, not resisted and ignored. And indeed, they need to be seen as paramount and fundamental to, indeed, they are fundamental to our personal conduct, behavior, and actions. And we need to understand our passions, emotions, our emotional selves, and the key relationships between rationality and reason and our emotional selves, our passions, our instincts, and our feelings, if we are to pursue and support well-being and happiness, and be as successful as we can be at preventing and reducing pain and suffering. Importantly, our emotions, passions, feelings, and instincts, while often aligned with helping us support the goals of well-being for ourselves and others, they are not always aligned. As an example of alignment in the first place, our feelings of care, concern, and love for others are likely necessary for and instrumental in our acting to support the well-being of others. And of course, we also have feelings of sadness, frustration, and sometimes anger, which can also serve to support our actions aiming to support the well-being of others. For anger, sadness, and hurt at the sight of injustice, for example, can motivate us to take action, motivate us to act, to do what we can to improve situations and right wrongs that we encounter, as well as acting to support fairness and justice for ourselves. Our responses to negatively selfish, destructive actions are, for the most of us, initially emotional, leading us to wish to help those in need, with our feeling intense sadness, indeed anger and frustration, indeed sometimes hatred, contempt, and disgust at those who've engaged in murder, oppressive action, torture, and other awful actions. While our responses need to be rational in terms of how to tackle such evil and remove the pain of suffering and suffering of those subject to such evil actions, it's our deepest human emotions which will motivate us in many cases to take action. Where they align with core principles, our feelings and emotions can serve to provide caring, loving, deep, strong, highly embedded and long-term motivation for supporting others, pursuing good and appropriate conduct as expressed through and embodied in the core principles and other principles. In fact, of course, our emotions, feelings, instincts, our passions to some extent serve to constrain and define what we mean by well-being. Aside from supporting our physical well-being, which of course affects our emotional and mental well-being, we all wish the positive feelings of joy, happiness, fulfillment, to be loved and respected, to feel love and to be loved, to feel wanted, to feel successful, respected, considered of value and worth by others. Indeed, sometimes we just wish to feel. And we wish to avoid as far as we can the negative feelings of sadness, despair, emptiness, loneliness, depression, pain, anxiety, amongst the range of other negative and unpleasant feelings possible. And it's therefore rational in terms of core principles to aim to seek and achieve and enjoy positive feelings and emotions and avoid negative and painful or distressing feelings. Although I have to say it's inevitable we'll experience some negative and painful feelings at some times. Yet clearly our feelings, passions, our instincts, our emotions can also act against us in our efforts to promote well-being and happiness for ourselves and others. They can cloud our ability to act rationally and motivate bad and destructive conduct, including for some people leading them to hatred, leading them to engage in violence and destruction. Anger, for example, while in some cases motivating us to deal with unfairness and injustice in our lives, motivating us to speak our feelings. When anger is not pursued in line with reason, rationality, care and love for others, it's likely to lead to immense pain, not just for others, but for the person feeling that anger. Even our feelings of deep and passionate love for another, while often beneficial, can sometimes also harm both ourselves and those we feel we love, especially if our love is unreciprocated, such that we feel desperately unloved, rejected, unwanted, inadequate, and perhaps let down. If passionate love is pursued clumsily without regard for the feelings of others, if it disregards the personhood of the person whom we feel our love for, if our love becomes possessive, controlling through feelings of jealousy, through fear of losing a partner, or through an arrogant desire perhaps for power and control over another, then this is destructive. It can hardly be seen as love, as in no way supporting of the well-being of another, undoubtedly causing in many cases significant pain and suffering, which is entirely unacceptable. So with our emotions, feelings and instincts being essential to our human selves, we need to be self-aware in regard to how we feel and think, bearing in mind our emotions, our feelings, who we are. And we must work using reason, rationality, logic, evidence, which includes our understanding and knowledge of others. Where necessary, we have to work to change or manage our emotional states, or otherwise manage our personal conduct and actions, such that we are truly supporting the well-being of others and not causing them pain and suffering. So to summarize what I put forward in this video, we've looked at some length at two additional fundamental principles, subsidiary to the core principles of supporting well-being and preventing and reducing pain and suffering. The first additional fundamental principle, dealing with the need for us to use rationality, reason and evidence to support us in achieving our core principles, our goals. And the second additional fundamental principle, the need for us to use our passions, emotions and instincts to help us achieve our well-being goals. Both recognition and acknowledgement of our emotional selves and the use of rational thought and action are needed to achieve maximal well-being and happiness. Again, if you have any comments, then please place these in the comment sections below the video. I'd be really glad to hear these comments. Our next video will look at the issue of personal responsibility in our lives, putting forward the principle that we should take personal responsibility for ourselves, others, for our families, communities, societies, and our broader humanity. Thanks for listening. See you soon.